Psalm 107. The psalmist tells and then kind of retells the history, in a metaphorical sense, the history of Israel. In verse 13, after he's written about how because Israel had rejected God's design, they had rebelled against his commands, they when they stumbled, there was no one there to help them. And then in verse 13, he says, then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. We talked about that last time, and I don't think I can overemphasize anything, but I think it deserves overemphasis to bear in mind that God's deliverance doesn't come in a flash, in a moment. Didn't come from him for Israel in Egypt for 430 years. Now, my I guess it would be the assumption is that they weren't slaves all 430 years, but it wouldn't have taken long for the transitions of governments and pharaohs to forget Joseph and all that he had done for Egypt. And so I think, I don't know, I think it's too, it wouldn't be right for me to say for 400, no, it probably took, I don't know, 80 or 100 years for that transition to occur. But it did. And as Israel grew in number, they became such a threat to Ramses II that he made their work as slaves almost impossibly difficult. Well, okay, anyway. They cried out to God. When they finally reached the end of, themselves and their pride, I think, they cried out to God, and God answered them. He saved them from their distress. In verse 14, he brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and we talked about that, and broke away their chains. This is, of course, metaphorical language. When Israel was in Egypt as slaves, they were not in chains. They were closely and severely guarded, but they were doing backbreaking, sun up till sundown manual labor. Okay, verse 15. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. For he breaks down gates of bronze and cuts through bars of iron. Giving praise to God and giving thanks to him is a constant theme, really throughout the entire Bible. But if you ever have the chance or the time or the interest to read all the way through the book of Psalms, you realize giving thanks to God is it's the theme. It rings out loud and clear and long. This is a convicting question for me. Does my life adhere to that pattern? Am I a guy who, I can't say constantly, I don't think anybody can pull that off, but is giving thanks such a normal, ingrained part of my patterns that it really does mark my life? One of the things about, if that is true, whenever it is true, it resets my perspective on all of life. To give thanks to God, not just for what he does, but for who he is. And that's what the psalm says. Let them give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love. It starts with that. And then God expresses his love for us by intervening into our lives and sorry, our situations. Give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love and his wonderful deeds for mankind. Well, yeah. I'm so grateful for God's love and that he expresses it through his wonderful deeds. Now, I'm replowing some ground here, but it's worth doing. There have been lots of psychological studies for decades now on the value of giving thanks. One of the suggested practices that comes out of these studies is to devise, develop, build a journal of gratitude where we actually write down things for which we're grateful. I realized in my own life, last week, and as I think about it, man, I'm a slow learner, but I realized I really struggle with, in the mornings, the time I think it may most be critical for me to focus on gratitude at the beginning of my day. I really struggle with that because I'm a horrible morning person. It's my least favorite time of day. I'm probably making excuses, but my brain just does not fire off well early when I get up. I don't care whether I get up at 5 a.m. or 10 a.m. It still doesn't fire well. And I'm doing good to make my way to the bathroom and do my morning ablutions and then put on a cup of coffee, find a way to get my clothes on so I'm half presentable. And the mental process that's required for giving thanks is, I'm sorry. Lord, I'm sorry to you that it takes me, the giving thanks thing, I'm sorry, it gets hijacked by, do I put my left sock on or my right sock on? What am I'm not brain dead, but the phrase I use is I am dunderheaded. This is not an excuse. It's only a reason. I am intentionally trying to shorten the margin required for my brain to fire off and catch up and start the day. And the best way for me to shorten that is to intentionally enforce upon myself the discipline of stating things for which I am grateful. I don't know if this applies to you. If it does, then join me in an effort powered by grace to build into my life and pattern a better approach, a more useful and effective approach to beginning the day with gratitude. And the reason why that matters, well, there's many reasons, but for me, the biggest reason is when I begin my day with complaint, which at my stage in life, there's a lot to complain about. But if I let myself begin my day in complaint, that's what orients the rest of the day. It sets the table for negative thinking, and I don't mean critical thinking in the way of, think well about ideas, and no, I'm criticism of thought. That's not it's not the same thing as sure not. This kind of critical thinking is not healthy or helpful. If, though, I start the day in gratitude, it also sets the table. That I then, it's a little bit like my mind gets opened to a vista, a broader horizon of the goodness of God, the goodness of my life, the goodness of people around me, and on and on and on it goes. When I focus on the goodness, I'm going to see it. But when I focus on the badness, I'm going to see that. All right. Let us give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love. Start there. And for how he expresses his unfailing love with wonderful deeds. Get specific. There's a big difference between me saying, God, thank you, God, for your love and for being so good to me always. Well, that's not evil or wrong, but it's ineffective, really. When I say, God, I'm really thankful for your love. And yesterday, when I met that guy in the lobby and realized this is a guy I want to get to know, that was not coincidental. That was because out of your love, you connected me. And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you. I have a digital picture frame that I gave Debbie. I don't think she looks at it very much, but in my quiet time chair, it's in my line of sight. And I put on pictures of our family and grandkids and kids, and they make me so grateful. All three of our daughters are awesome people. I mean, they're the cream of the crop. And I'm so grateful for that. And our grandkids, holy cow, and our sons-in-law. So it's a cascading effect, and it works in both directions. If I begin with gratitude, the cascade is more gratitude. If I begin in complaint cascades. Okay, this is not rocket science. It's not even necessarily PhD psychology. It's just your and my life experience. So the challenge is, let us. Of course, God really has already permitted this. We must, by intention, seize any and every opportunity to give thanks to the Lord for his unfailing love. Just those two words, unfailing love. Boy, you could ride that a long, long time if you think deeply about it. And his wonderful deeds for mankind, of which you and I are one. Well, pick it up again here next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.